Anatomy students, today we're talking about joint classification. Now you have a note sheet that corresponds to this slide deck, and as always, the slide numbers are listed, and then the questions below the slide numbers on your note sheet correspond to what you see on the slide. And your slide numbers are down in the lower right-hand corner here. So grab a pencil and let's get started. So the first thing to know is that joints are also called articulations, and this is where two bones are going to meet. There are two functions that joints have. The first is to hold two bones securely together, and the other is to allow for movement of the skeleton itself. So, if you think about it, if all of our joints, like if our elbow was completely merged and we only had one bone, that would really limit the way that we're able to move about. So we can classify joints by function, and remember the main function of joints is to allow for movement of our skeleton. We have synarthroses, amphiarthroses, and diarthroses. Synarthroses are immovable. These are mostly going to be found in the axial skeleton. These are firm attachments that are going to offer protection. You are going to see some, however, in the appendicular skeleton, and we'll talk about those in a couple of slides. Amphiarthroses are slightly movable. These are also found largely in the axial skeleton. Again, they're going to provide for firm attachments and protection. And then diarthroses are freely movable joints. These are ones where the joint is going to provide us with the greatest amount and the greatest variety of movements. All right, here we are on slide number 4. We are talking about classifying joints now by structure. So by structure, I mean, what is keeping these two bones together in order to form the articulation? Sometimes you're going to be using fibrous tissue or cartilage, and then in other joints, there's going to be a joint cavity that actually separates the two bones. Usually, if you have a fibrous connection, that means that the joint is immovable or synarthrotic. And if the joint is cartilaginous, it can be both or either immovable or slightly movable. Most of these are slightly movable. And if it's classified as synovial, it means that it is freely movable or diarthrotic. All right, on slide number 5, what you have to do is fill in the table with details about tissues that form these joints. And so first, let's talk about cartilage. So we have 3 different kinds of cartilage that we learned when we were learning about body tissues. Cartilage is going to provide structure with some flexibility. And if you look at the picture that you see here, the light blue is hyaline cartilage. Hyaline is going to have lots of collagen in a very rubbery matrix. We even felt this on the cow femur when we did that dissection. It's just, it looks white, it covers the end of the bone, it's very slippery. Fibrocartilage, which is shown in purple on the diagram, is what's going to make up the menisci within the knee joint. It's also going to make up the intervertebral discs as well as the symphysis pubis. And this fibrocartilage has lots of collagen and it is highly compressible. So it's going to be more compressible than that hyaline cartilage. Finally, we have elastic cartilage, and in the picture, that's what's making up our external ear. It contains collagen, but also elastic fibers that are going to allow our ears and the tip of our nose to maintain their shapes. Some other tissues that you're going to find in the joints include dense, regular connective tissue. This is fibrous connective tissue. So recall that dense, regular connective tissue is going to contain lots of collagen fibers, and those collagen fibers are arranged parallel to one another, so they're able to be packed together very, very closely. And then the second kind of tissue that is associated with joints is areolar connective tissue. So remember that areolar connective tissue is known as a loose connective tissue. It's one of the three that we studied. And it's got collagen fibers and elastic fibers, but those fibers are going to be distributed kind of in a random order with lots of space for the intracellular matrix to kind of fill in those spaces. These are really good for allowing for the diffusion of substances from one place to another through that tissue. This is what synovial membranes are made out of. And the cells that live along with these different kinds of fibers, they are going to secrete synovial fluid. Okay, now we're on slide 7 and we're taking a look at fibrous joints. So the first two fibrous joints that I wanted to talk about are sutures and the gomphosis. And so these are pictures A and C. But I wanted to put these two together because the amount of movement that they provide is the same. These are both synarthrotic joints, or we can just say that they are synarthroses. And the sutures are going to be held together with very short fibers that are going to kind of knit the bones of the skull together. So you might remember seeing that when we did our bone lab, when we looked at the skull, like it looks like they have like jagged little lines like separating the different bones of the skull. Well, those are the sutures, and the fibers are so short and strong that they're going to limit the movement of those bones, thank goodness. Gomphosis, I just remember this as like Cookie Monster because he loves to eat and you need to chew your cookies in order to eat them, and he just goes gum 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 gum. So this is a gomphosis. And so a gomphosis is a special kind of joint. This is where you have a peg that fits into a socket, and the place where you're going to see this is where the teeth meet up with the mandible, and the teeth are going to be held in place here by what's called the periodontal ligament. It's just going to hold the tooth directly in that socket. Our last one is called a syndesmosis. A syndesmosis is very similar to a suture except for one difference. The fibers that are holding these bones together are longer, so they are going to offer a little bit of wiggle, a little bit of movement. So we would classify a syndesmosis as an amphiarthrotic joint or an amphiarthrosis. You're going to find an amphiarthrosis here on the picture between the tibia and the fibula, and as you can see, you've got the lateral and the medial malleoli down at the bottom, so that's going to be at the distal end of these bones, allowing for them to move. It's also going to be found at the radial ulnar joint, which is in the upper arm near the elbow. Or I'm sorry, in the lower arm near the elbow. Sorry about that. All right, we have two kinds of cartilaginous joints. We have synchondroses and symphyses. Synchondroses are synarthrotic, so they are not going to provide any kind of movement. They are made of hyaline cartilage, and you're going to find them in two main places. The first place is in the epiphyseal plate. This is a temporary hyaline cartilage joint, and this is going to hold the epiphysis to the diaphysis in long bones. Another place where you're going to find a synchondrosis is between the ribs and the sternum. So remember that the rib bone doesn't connect directly to the sternum. It's connected by costal cartilage. And so where the rib bone meets up with the costal cartilage and where the sternum meets up with the costal cartilage, all of those joints are considered synchondroses. So this is a cartilaginous joint that offers no movement at all. A symphysis is amphiarthrotic, and symphyses are where two bones are connected with like a plug or like a little pillow of fibrocartilage. So you're going to find this between the two pubic bones of the pelvis. That's called the pubic symphysis. And then you're also going to find them between the vertebrae because the cartilage there are the intervertebral discs. All right, we are now on slide number 9, and we're talking about synovial joint. We have 4 distinguishing features. They contain articular cartilage. They have an articular capsule. They have a joint cavity, and they have reinforcing ligaments. And as you can see, the articular capsule is going to be made up of 2 layers. You have fibrous connective tissue on the outside, and you have the synovial membrane, which is made of areolar connective tissue on the inside. It is the areolar connective tissue, the synovial membrane, that secretes the synovial fluid. And then you have reinforcing ligaments. These are simply the ligaments that are going to connect one bone to another in the joint. Now, I've also got circled on the picture bursa and tendon sheath. A bursa is simply a little pocket or a little pillow that's filled with synovial fluid, and they are situated in between the ligaments of the joint. And that's just so that as the bones move, the ligaments don't crush against the bone and start to fray. Like if you took like a piece of twine or string or rope and you put it around like the leg of a table or a chair and you just kind of moved it around, that would start to fray and eventually break. So the bursa is going to prevent that from happening. And the tendon sheath is going to have exactly the same function. It's just got a different, it's just a different structure. Instead of being like a little pillow or a little pocket, instead it's kind of like a tube that actually wraps around the ligament in order to protect it from friction against the bone when it moves. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause this video here. This is the end of video 1. For the next slides, numbers 10 through 15, you're going to have to go back to Canvas and click on video 2 because I'm not going to be able to get through this in just 3 minutes.